Joe Zarzaur here for another update for this COVID stuff. As we spoke last Friday, we said we were going to be back when we felt like the news justified it. Over the weekend, there was, at least I noticed, a long line of Pensacolians lined up at UWF for that new testing site. And I was curious to know if we have any data from that test site or not yet. Do you know?
No specific data to that site. And in fact, I was just checking here as we were going on, and I haven't seen any updated numbers for today in the afternoon quite yet. I guess usually they say how many collections they've done at specific sites, and I haven't even seen that published. And I've looked at the county website and also the local media, and nothing there yet either.
All right.
I guess
you also sent me last night a new updated list. I think that was updated for the numbers of infected cases that are coming out of the long-term care facilities. And
yeah,
if I was reading those correctly, are we still the county that has the most reported cases rather, for COVID in these long-term care facilities in the state of Florida?
Yeah. So, and I'll remind you that they're calling these current cases. So it's different than the cumulative cases starting back, as early as like March. But so right now there's positive residents statewide. There's 1,568 as of yesterday. And then it says positive staff, 1,461. And so then just keep that number in mind, just say 1,500. And then you go to the Scambia, Yep. So Scambia right here starts with Arcadia at the top, and then it ends down at Specialty Health. So we're like that little grouping in there. Right. And we have 45 residents in the Bayside facility, which is what we had last year. And then we still have 94 at Southern Oaks.
Wow.
And 11 at Rosewood. And again, just like that 45 and then 94 are more than some counties are reporting for their total positives.
And so if you add all those up, what percent of the total state cases in Florida is that? Just 140?
150, 160. Well, and then, 160 out of the 1,500. So we're probably close to 10%. And that's of the residents. And then if you look at the staff, I mean, there's tons of staff in here. There's 13, there's 6, there's 6.
Right.
I guess what's astounding to me is that the Southern Oaks was up, I think, as high as 12 or 13 staff, and now it's back down to 6. So I don't know if there's some nuance there, like staff either doesn't work there anymore or they're not infected. I'm not quite sure how that number's being published or pushed.
Well,
but either way, a large percentage statewide on both those counts.
And this is especially alarming to me and indicative, unfortunately, of negligence, in my opinion. When you look at the fact that Escambia County, relative to the rest of the state of Florida, is a small county, and if you look at I think the numbers that I last looked at, if you take Palm Beach County, Miami-Dade County, those in Broward County, I think Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and Broward, those 3 counties make up, I think, a third of the state of Florida's population, period. And so, and then you look at the nursing home numbers or the assisted, whatever, the long-term care facility numbers for those 3 counties, which make up a third of the state's entire population. And you would expect to see those numbers higher in those facilities. But for whatever reason, unless somebody comes up with another reason why we would have more cases than South Florida, where there's more population and they have more cases total, why all of a sudden, unless our entire population positive cases is actually underreported or under detected, and the whole county is higher, okay, which would then make sense that the long-term care facilities are higher. Unless that's the case, then what else would explain it besides these facilities just drop the ball completely on taking care of their residents?
Yeah, and I think one of the outlets that I checked, and it wasn't necessarily a local one, it was just saying that a lot of these facilities rely on staff that work at a variety of facilities. So they may do the first part of their one facility, and then they do like night shift somewhere else. These people that have 2 jobs to get by, And so at that point, you're cross-contaminating. And that is a weak link right there. It's relying upon someone is so badly that they need to work that you're kind of looking the other way as far as might they be a vector. So.
Yeah, that's scary. You're saying if somebody works in the nursing home as an LPN or MA or something, and then they every other night they work at I don't know, Publix or something to supplement their income. Is that what you mean?
Well, or at another facility. These are
Okay.
people that might be working at a couple of different long-term care facilities. So they get 20 hours a week at one, and then they do every other weekend at another one or something like that. And that's the way that they support themselves, which is fine. But if you're taking one illness and taking it to the it's like having one big facility at that point, and you're really contaminating everybody.
All right.
Or exposing everybody.
When this first started, again, we're doing skeleton staff in the office, remote, everybody else remote, all high-risk staff members remote. And we're following these procedures where people take their temperature 3 times a day. We wipe down all the surfaces. We don't let anybody in the office. All packages are wiped down. What else are we doing? Michelle, Evan, you remember what else are we doing up here?
Everybody's using their own workspace, so it's
Right.
not like it's not like this communal type. It's set up to be that way where you could kind of shift around during the day, but everybody's
The upstairs
stuck in
people
one
are
spot for the
the upstairs folks are using the upstairs a different entrance. The downstairs folks are using a different entrance. Lunch is brought in. Nobody's going out. Anyway, we're trying to take all these precautions to be safe with the skeleton crew we have here. And we're doing all these things in hopes of lessening the chance that we contribute to somebody passing this virus, right? This morning, Dr. Gottlieb is the former FDA official that has been quite prolific on Twitter during all of this. And I've been paying attention both to his tweets, and he's occasionally on Fox Business and CNBC, which I put a lot of maybe it's misplaced trust, but I put a lot of faith that the people with the most money to lose are doing a lot of research. So I like to watch CNBC and Fox Business because they have guests on there that are CEOs of these big companies, right? Where money is really not an object as far as research and trying to figure out what's going on, especially if they're a company that has the ability to do that research on their own. And so Dr. Gottlieb was on CNBC this morning, and he was talking about how there's an antibody test that everybody's been talking about, and then there's an antigen test, okay? First of all, what is the difference between an antibody and an antigen, and why is Dr. Gottlieb, why was he this morning so keen on the antigen test versus the antibody test? He made it sound like the antigen test was going to be a lot easier and quicker and something else, blah, blah. And so I know you probably hadn't read up on this recently, but maybe you have. But he brought that up, and I thought I'd ask you just generally describe what the difference is between those two tests.
So the antigen is the offending agent. That's what the virus basically injects into your system, the antigen. And so to be able to detect that antigen before you even have an active infection during that asymptomatic period is what they're talking about, where they can grab these people before they feel poorly. And that's the scary thing about this virus is there's that lag of 2 weeks. With influenza, it's a day and you feel horrible. So you're not mobile out there spreading your virus, shedding it for everybody else to share with you. So catching that antigen early is what Dr. Gottlieb is talking about. But how do you do that?
He was saying something about how the antigen evidently, I don't know, when you, he was comparing to a flu test. And again, I was running when I watched this, so I wasn't paying close attention to what he was saying. But when your test, is there a flu test and does it use antigens or does it use antibodies or does it use something else? Because
it uses the antigen. So you get influenza A and B testing. And so you say they're antigen positive for influenza B, but not A, or vice versa. So that's what these people get. They get the rapid influenza test when they go to the ER and you complain of something. You know if you're positive or negative by the time halfway through your visit in the ER doctors and nurses know if they're contending with influenza infection, among other things.
Okay. All right. Maybe the quickness of that antigen test seemed a little more appealing to Dr. Gottlieb. And then I heard them talking about pharmacists, and I think this is something that we've actually passed here, but pharmacists are going to be able to administer some version of these tests, some antibodies, antigens, whatever, the COVID test. Have you heard that too?
Yes, it's for the antigen, as best I understand. And ideally, you get to the point where you can check for the antibody as well, and you'd get, in order to get as best of a map as possible to know how prevalent this is or was at one point, you got to get other personnel besides doctors and nurses at hospitals to do this. So that when you're getting the pharmacists, you're trying to extend into the community and offer this to all comers. And the antibody test is, if they can reliably say that you are now immune to this, whatever the infection is, because you have an antibody to it, that's how you get people to be able to return to activities. You know, if you're on a skeleton crew, you say, hey, but 3 of the people will have the antibody, so they're going to be in here for sure. And then we have 2 people that are high risk, so they should be at home. So you can better prioritize or triage how you're going to run your employment or whatever arena you're in. That's how you would decide it with that antibody test on your side.
Okay. All right. So what are the numbers as of? I know we hadn't got the numbers from the weekend or from yesterday, but do we have the numbers from Saturday?
Yeah, so I always like looking back about a week ago, and just about a week ago we were just under 500 in the county, and here we are today, not updated yet this afternoon, and we were at 595. So it's jumped 100 over the course of a week, but the big jump was actually over this past weekend on Saturday into Sunday. There was a leap of like 55 cases in the county, which I think you and I were chatting about, and I think I would imagine that part of that is due to the expanded testing. And I know that West Florida site opened up on Thursday. So I would imagine that some of the data is coming from that. But also we saw a big jump in the long-term care facility numbers too.
I'm really interested in knowing, out of that long line of cars that was on the news clip that I watched, that was lined up for that West Florida testing. I don't know if that was Friday night or Saturday or whatever day that was. What % of those folks tested positive? I'd like to know that, because it looks like, I mean, there were prerequisites to these people showing up. They had to have fever, they had to have some symptoms, and so all those people theoretically in line had those symptoms. So
I think that one, from what I saw, was laid out like the other ones in town, where it was there was no prerequisite.
Oh, really?
No Yeah, so that's all comers. There's no conditions to get into the line or anything like that. But the initial ones that the hospitals were hosting, 8 weeks ago now, 7 weeks ago, that's the ones where you had to call ahead, basically have an appointment. They identified you. This was all comers. So
so it could be that some of those people just have allergies and they're just happy, they're just worried, or they're high risk.
Yeah.
And they have a cough. Like last week I had a cough. One day I had a scratchy throat last week. And then the next day, I swear, I felt like a fever, whatever. And then, of course, I kept telling myself, this is exactly what you feel like when you have allergies every year. And it was that, but it's, of course, first thing I thought of was, and then I started coughing. Then I could have sworn I had shortness of breath. And, of course, I didn't. And so, anyway, are there any other tidbits of information that we can offer the folks watching this today on the COVID stuff?
Yeah, just very quickly, and I'll pull this up if you give me just a second. I guess the big news that I saw is the antiviral drug that I guess was late last week, where the FDA approved that and said, hey, we've done enough testing now that we realize that this cuts down someone's duration of illness from 14 days down to 10 days. And so I'll bring this little cartoon back up.
Oh, yeah, we did this cartoon.
Yeah. So,
Remdesivir.
so inside the cell, which is the light blue bottom portion, that's your body's cell that's being attacked. Inside there, you see the viruses are trying to replicate, and they're calling it sexy time in there. And the remdesivir that's where it acts. So what happens with this drug? Well, first of all, back up. The drug was developed for Ebola, and they tried to apply it to some other illnesses, but it really didn't work. And this was over the last many years. And so it was shelved, like, hey, it's just not going to be a useful drug for any infections that we know of. And then this infection came out, and they said, well, let's start running some tests. And sure enough, they saw that it can stop this replication. So the virus infects our cells, and then inside the cell, it hijacks our cell's machinery that can replicate RNA for the virus, the genetic material. So it hijacks it, and our cells start replicating viral RNA, and then more virus particles spread from there. Well, what they found is that this remdesivir can stop that replication, that hijacking process. And they've done some dose-dependent studies on it, where the more of the drug, the greater turndown you get as far as replication, to the point where they said that these people's disease course of 14 days was cut down significantly down to 10 days. And that's important because that's the time that you're seeing that cytokine storm, that second week. And so it's an important 4 days. And so with that, they cut the study short and said, we got to move forward with this. So it's an IV drug. It's not a pill. And right now it's for people it's compassionate use, meaning hospitalized people who are ill enough to get it. You got to give it soon enough though. So it's a whole algorithm as to how to dose it. So there is some hope, but I guess this is part of that multi-pronged approach where you got to have some other treatment options. You know, if there's some sort of a pill like the Tamiflu that people take for influenza, and then along with testing for both the antigen and the antibody, as Dr. Gottlieb had mentioned. So I just want to bring this up in case people see it in the news and say, what drug are they talking about all of a sudden? It's this cartoon that we showed a few weeks ago.
Right. And then we're expecting those numbers to come out today, this afternoon, between 5:30 and 6. Is that right?
Yeah, they've been updating at 5:30 every day. Let me refresh my browser and just see if we've gotten any new data here yet from the county, at least.
And while you're doing that, I want to chat a little bit about this. These nursing home cases, they're troublesome in the sense that to me, it sounds like we have an inordinate amount of positive cases in these facilities, and we don't necessarily have that large of amount of infection in our county. So it seems disproportionate to when you look at the other places in the state that have more total cases, a lot more total cases, and less infection in these facilities. That doesn't necessarily mean there's negligence, but it certainly could mean there's negligence. And I would encourage every family member of anybody that's passed away from this virus to really ask the questions of the facility and find out exactly what measures they had in place, and then go so far as to get the records and make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to do. This is the kind of stuff that that's what our system is here for, to make sure that people are held accountable if they do ignore basically all the warning signs that we had in this, especially at these long-term care facilities, and throw caution to the wind. But were those numbers updated, Dr. Malone?
No, they're not. I just looked and refreshed. The county is not up, and neither is the state as far as the afternoon update. And it's usually between 5:30 and 6 our time that I've been seeing it, so nothing on there yet. But if there's an updated link here by the time we post this video, we'll make sure to share it.
I've also been in my soapbox today about the 7th Amendment, because the 7th Amendment to the Constitution is one of the most important amendments that we have. And for those of us that maybe don't know, because frankly, I forget from time to time what number it is, but it's the right to trial by jury. And it basically protects all the other rights. So everybody talks about the First Amendment. They talk about the Second Amendment ad nauseum. The right to bear arms, everybody knows what that is, right? And so without the 7th Amendment, you have no protection for the other amendments, because if you surrender the ability to have your issues aired in front of a jury of your peers, then you're basically asking a single person or a government agency or potentially a private corporation to decide your dispute, right? To determine whether you have the right to do X. And right now, it started with the nursing homes. They were lobbying before these numbers got released to have something passed in the state legislature that would shelter them from any liability. Okay, now we know why they didn't want that, because these numbers are now out, right? Then we had the hospitals doing the same thing, okay? And then we have now the U.S. Congress is trying to make it to where all of us agree to allow businesses to get away with being negligent under the circumstances. Now, let me tell you why that doesn't make sense, okay? I'm going to explain it to you in terms you can understand, everybody can understand, and it'll make sense. Because I agree with the argument that we need to do everything practically possible to get the economy started, okay? But here's why the end effect of having the right to bring your case to court is not going to slow that down. No lawyer that works like me on contingency fee. First of all, that's who brings lawsuits, by the way. Lawyers that work on a contingency fee. No lawyer is going to bet on a case and spend money on the case and bring it to court if they think the jury is going to say, you know what, everybody was trying to do their best during the COVID time, and yeah, that business was trying its best to protect its workers, and yeah, maybe they didn't have new masks every day for their staff, but they were supplying them with masks every week, and they were encouraging their staff to wear them along with other things, and they were acting reasonable under the circumstances, so we're not going to hold that corporation or that business liable for negligence. Okay? No jury is going to measure any corporation in a vacuum or business in a vacuum when we're all going through this. We all know how stressful it is. No lawyer is going to bring that case. Okay? The cases that are going to get brought are the ones where a business is negligent and borderline grossly negligent, where they make an employee who's high risk come to work and says to them, if you don't come to work, we're going to fire you. They come to work, they get the disease, and they die. And they have no protocols in place. None. They don't have masks. They don't have cleaning agents. They don't screen people. There's no temperature taken. There's no screens at the Publix. The reason all these businesses take precautions in large part is because they worry that they're going to be liable later, especially the bigger ones, okay? You might want to think they're doing it because they're good corporate citizens, okay, fine. All right, maybe some of them are. But in large part, the people that are counting the dollars and the cents of these corporations are thinking about how much it's going to cost them if they don't take these steps. And they end up making somebody sick or causing somebody to, heaven forbid, die, okay? So my point in telling you all this is this. You do not need a law that says, I'm going to sacrifice my Seventh Amendment right to trial by jury. I'm going to just hand that off to the business interest and let them just take care of whatever they need to do just to get the economy back. That is not what we need to do. We need to understand that juries are trustworthy bodies, in my opinion. I've been on a jury. And if you've been on a jury, you know what I'm talking about, okay? The folks that typically criticize juries are the ones that typically try to get out of jury service, in my experience, okay? So if you've ever tried to get out of jury service and you're critical of the jury system, perhaps you should rethink your jury summons next time you get it in the mail, okay? Because I've tried a lot of cases to a jury. I've lost a lot of cases. I've won a lot of cases. Every one that I've lost, I've never thought that a jury did something wrong, okay? I thought the jury seized on a fact in my case that was not so great, and arguably they were correct. So my point is this. Why do we want to take that power away from the people of this country? I can't think of a reasonable reason to do that, except for if you want a business to take advantage of it. All right, that's my soapbox for the day. I'm going to hammer that because the more I hear politicians talking about taking the Seventh Amendment right away, the more aggravated I get about all of them. Because keep in mind, Seventh Amendment the right to trial by jury is there to protect all the others, all the other rights we have. And if you take that one away, you can take away the rest of the rights without a lot of policing and without being held accountable. So keep that in mind. All right, doctor, I went off so long that we may have gotten some updated numbers. Did we?
Nope. I just refreshed the browser.
Good.
Nothing new. So
Good.
no new updates, but I'll patrol like I've been doing it.
Very good. I also noticed some wrecks over the weekend. Unfortunately, there was a couple of death cases the firm actually had gotten involved with. With potential clients from. I hate to see that. One of them involved alcohol. It's really important, folks, that we keep in mind, be defensive drivers right now. People are happy to be out. They've been cooped up for weeks, 8 weeks, months now. And folks are just happy to be doing things, seeing different scenery, right? And they're probably doing everything a little bit in excess, including drinking and speeding and passing and doing other things that they may not typically do. But they're doing it because they are, everybody's all, tired of being locked in a room or a house with the same people. So be careful. If you need us, you can find us on the web at zarzaurlaw.com. 855-HIRE-JOE is the phone number. You can comment under this video, or you can always get us on Facebook, Twitter, and all these other social media outlets.
We do FaceTime. We do FaceTime too.
Yeah, we do FaceTime. That's how we're meeting with clients, virtual meetings and FaceTime meetings and whatever else. But you can get us if you need us. Y'all take care. Be safe. We'll see you later this week. Thank you, Dr. Malone.
All right. Bye now.